24 minutes past 8, BBC Radio Oxford. Good morning. Charles Nove here with the Breakfast Show until 10 this morning. World leaders are meeting in Paris today to discuss a possible new global agreement on climate change. Demonstrations were held around the world over the weekend demanding urgent action on the issue. In Paris itself, 200 demonstrators were arrested after clashes with the police. The conference will try to come up with a solution to a problem that current commitments to cut greenhouse gas emissions won't stop the temperature of the planet rising above the limit already set by the UN. United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon says that current governments' pledges to cut global warming emissions aren't enough, but that he is positive that an agreement can be reached.
This time, I'm optimistic that we will be able to have an ambitious and robust universal climate change agreement. I think that all the stars are aligning in one direction.
Dr. Paul Williams is a climate scientist. He was an independent reviewer of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report. Paul, good morning.
Good morning.
Where are we currently in terms of the world's temperature and how close to the danger point, if there is a fixed danger point?
Well, that's a very apt question because we're just about to cross a very symbolic number, which is 1 degree Celsius of warming compared to the pre-industrial climate. And that would put us halfway towards 2 degrees, and that's significant because the international consensus agreement now is that dangerous climate change is that 2 degree threshold. So climate change becomes dangerous, and we've got to stop it crossing that 2 degree threshold. And so this year, almost certainly, and if not this year, probably next year, we'll be halfway towards that 2 degree threshold.
And there's a serious sort of fear that the wheels will begin to fall off dramatically at 2 degrees.
Yes, that's when climate change starts to become not just the incremental changes that we've seen so far with the 1 degree of warming, and that's things like changing weather patterns, more extreme weather and heat waves and flooding. It's important to remember that the climate is not a linear system, and what I mean by that is that the increased impacts that we'll see in going from 1 degree to 2 degrees are likely to be much more intense than the impacts that we've seen in going from 0 to 1 degrees, if you see what I mean. So the response, we can expect the impacts to amplify with the next 1 degree worth of warming if we get to 2 degrees.
And the ambition from this conference, we saw the big conference in Copenhagen, which was, about 6 years ago, and
yeah.
That really descended into chaos and ill feeling, and the impression is nothing much came out of it. What's the ambition from this time round?
Yeah, I share your analysis there. The United Nations has been having a conference on climate change every year since 1995. So the conference that's in Paris starting today, this week and next week, is the 21st conference in that series. And it just goes to show that even after 20 years worth of talks, we haven't really seen the emissions cuts that the science is telling us we need. So there's a bit of a view that we're in the last chance saloon here, and we really have to make some progress. A bit like the progress we made with the Montreal Protocol in 1987, and that was about CFCs and the ozone hole and the ozone layer. So, I take heart from that, and that's my reason for optimism, is that the Montreal Protocol shows that the human race can solve these difficult environmental problems if we put our heads together. And what we need to see this week and next week in Paris is tackling the climate change problem with the same intensity and enthusiasm that we tackled the ozone hole problem back in 1987 in Montreal.
Very interesting you should bring that up. I'd forgotten about the CFCs, but yeah, that was a big change, wasn't it? Thank you. Dr. Paul Williams, a climate scientist and was an independent reviewer of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report. Conference goes on in Paris, and let us see what they can achieve.